Today I'm going to share my January reads from 2023 as well as my February TBR. Let's go. Never did I ever think I'd be making this video because I've never been a big reader. It was like in one fell swoop, I went from like sporadically reading books to going pretty hard on reading. This January, I broke a personal record for most books read in 1 month. And again, like I don't really know what happened, but I thought I should share this with the world. And so we're gonna go over the top books that I read in January. Now for reference, last year, I only read 21 books. And this past January, I read 12. I thought it was 11, then I went back and recounted and I read 12. Now, I finished 12 books. One of those books I had been reading previously, so it's kind of like 11 and a half, but still, I count it and I like cannot believe that it happened, but it was so good because I found that I was like a lot more present. I wasn't doing near as much screen time and I grew so much. Like my life got better, which sounds kind of dramatic, but seriously, like my mind grew, my mind was opened, my heart was stirred, and it all in all was a great month. So I hope to do it again next month, but you never know. It might have just been like an obsessive month of reading for me and I might do something else this February, but for now, so that you don't have to wait any longer to read your next book, let's dive into my January books that I read, followed up by my February TBR. My first read of the year was The Lazy Genius Way by Kendra Adachi. I first found out about Kendra Adachi and the Lazy Genius podcast through a friend, and I really latched on to her simple approaches to life efficiency that are very non-threatening. Like when she says, like, oh, here are 3 ways to make your life easier, she kind of backpedals and she'll be like, if that's too intense, just like, don't even worry about having 3 goals. Like she really simplifies stuff, and that's essentially what her whole book is about. And as a new stepmom and wife, I've found that it's really important for me to find ways to be more efficient in what I'm doing while also focusing on what matters the most in my life. And somehow she finds this happy medium on how to achieve that. It was a really good book to start off the year with, and I'm super glad that I read it. It's easy to read, it's fun to read, and I really recommend it if you're trying to find ways to, in a non-threatening, gentle, chill way, live life a little bit more efficiently. I'm a huge fan of memoirs, especially memoirs written by comedians. So The Greatest Love Story Ever Told by Megan Mullally and Nick Offerman was just a delight to read. It was my first audiobook of the year. And what was so nice about it is that it was like listening to a conversation between the two of them, which I doubt I'd ever be in the same room as them while they're sharing intimate details about their lives. And so it was just really fun to hear the things that they had to say. I felt inspired, minorly advised, and also like I probably didn't ever need to wax my eyebrows again, which was a great takeaway. So if you're looking for something fun and chill and easy to read and or listen to, I recommend it. So Waymaker by Ann Voskamp was a book I started on my honeymoon back in November. And what's crazy about that is that the first chapter, she's talking about her honeymoon, which was a trip, no pun intended. This book is really interesting because Ann Voskamp has a very poetic way of speaking and writing. So it took a while for me to digest, it took a while for me to get through. And she talks about topics like life, marriage, adoption, and her journey with God. So in the end, it was very inspiring, and I'm really glad that I read it. It gave me a renewed sense of hope that I didn't know that I needed, and I'm glad I made the push to finish it. A Christmas gift to me from a friend, A Man Called Ova by Frederick Backman, I don't know if I pronounced that right, was a total delight to read. So as not to spoil too much of it, I will say that it's about a curmudgeon who has gone through many hardships in his life and finds himself surrounded by his ragtag group of neighbors, and they surround him with community and fill him with a sense of purpose he did not previously have. It was a really fun read. I read it really fast, and all in all, it filled me with the feels and it made me cry. It also reminded me of the importance of community and how it can be healing so long as we're open to it. My third memoir of the year, At Home in the World by Tish Oxenreider, was about Tish's journey with her family as they spent 9 months traveling to various countries in the world, which is just in and of itself an incredible thing to accomplish. So it was really interesting to read about the various experiences that they had and the dynamics within their family. I expected to walk away from this book with a sense of wanderlust, and I did, but what I was surprised to find is that I ultimately found the goodness and was reminded of how important it is to settle into our roots in our place that we call home. And so it was a really good feeling, especially in this new season of my life as I'm establishing my new life, to remember that the greatest beauty lies in the things that we find mundane and everyday. The Making of Biblical Womanhood by Beth Allison Barr was an intense theological perspective on women preaching, teaching, and serving in the church. When I described it to friends, I was like, it's a very F the patriarchy kind of perspective, which I don't think I imagined it being quite so intense or quite so controversial. If you are not a church person, I would probably give it a hard pass. You probably wouldn't like it very much. But if you're someone who likes history and stories, she talks a lot about the medieval take on women in the church and essentially what that's looked like through history, which is kind of fascinating. The appendix on this book was very long, so she has a lot of research that has gone into this, and it's very intellectual. So if you're someone who just wants to learn more about this perspective or strengthen your defense for women in the church, this is the book for you. Hilariously, following 2 books written by religious authors, my next book is The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangu Mandana. This book was like a warm hug. It's, I think, considered romance, which is not my favorite genre, but what stood out to me was that it was a story about this individual finding herself and finding her place in the world, despite the adversity that she has faced. While not everything about the book was my favorite, see also romance, I ultimately really enjoyed it. Like I said, it was like a warm hug, and it kind of made me want to move to the UK and start a tea shop. Oh my sweet goodness, Interpreter of Maladies by Jhumpa Lahiri was such a good read. It is a collection of short stories that she has written about the immigrant experience. On one side, there are stories about immigrants who have come to the US and various situations they might find themselves in, and then there are stories about those who are native to Bangladesh and what they're experiencing in their own countries. And it really opened my eyes to the experiences of immigrants and the hardships that they go through, as well as the experiences of people from countries that are not my own. Obviously, as an American, I have a very jilted viewpoint of the world because of my personal experiences. So in that regard, it was a very healthy read for me and eye-opening, and it was stirring. It was hard to read, but I can't recommend it enough. Just generally in learning how to have more empathy for people who are going through those kinds of situations, and more understanding that people who are not from our cultures have very different experiences and very different viewpoints on the world. Can't recommend it enough. Obviously, it's very good as well because it's a Pulitzer Prize winner, so... Oh wait, no it's not. Just kidding. She wrote other Pulitzer Prize winners. I don't think that one... No wait, it did. Hold on. Just fact checked, yes, it did win a Pulitzer Prize, so that probably explains why it was so good. Highly recommend. So this is an awkward topic for me to discuss, but as you can imagine, Mating in Captivity by Esther Perel is about, well, sex. It is about intimate relationships in the context of commitment and the complex nuances that come with that. She focuses on both gay and heterosexual couples and does a lot of problem solving. It's a qualitative research, and so she is sharing a lot of stories from clients that she has had in the past, and it's also research-based. And so it's a really good read if you're wanting to learn more about what connection can look like with your partner. I listened to this as an audiobook, so getting to hear Esther and her wonderful European accent was an additional bonus. So when I put Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin, I don't know if I said that right, on hold at my local library. I had no idea what a hot item it was. I found it completely by accident because I Googled like French literature or books explaining the French experience. I was wanting to learn more about France, and this book has nothing to do with France. I'm pretty sure the author isn't French, and it doesn't talk about French language. Like, I don't have any idea why it popped up, but that doesn't matter. So knowing nothing about the book, I was pleasantly surprised when I found out it was about gaming. And as a former gamer, I was so pleased because it was just so fun. It felt right at home. It reminded me about a part of myself that I've kind of tucked away because I liked gaming a little too much and it sucked my life. So it was just really interesting. They talk about developing games and programming and the grind that these people go through to make games. And I have a lot more sympathy now for developers because it seems really hard. The format was a little interesting. It read almost kind of like watching a movie, and it kind of played with the format a few times. And I won't get into details about what that looked like, but it was at times fun, and at times it wasn't really my favorite, like her approach. I didn't necessarily love where the story went or some of the directions that it took, but all in all, I felt pretty inspired to unabashedly pursue my own creative endeavors, and to me, that made the book totally worth it. So this book was hard for me to start, and it was hard for me to finish, but the last 40 pages really had me, so there's that. I don't know why Peace Like a River by Lee Finger was so hard for me to get through, but it did stick with the theme of some of my books, which were around like finding your home or settling into a place of home, which was kind of cool. The book follows a family as they try to track down their outlaw brother and son. It deals with faith, there's a hint of the miraculous, and there's some very endearing characters like Swede, who is just so sweet and intelligent. It's not my favorite book. I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it, but I'm glad I read it. So my last book of January was Dear Girls by Ali Wong. Now, I shouldn't have been surprised because I've seen her stand-up routines, but this girl is dirty. She's funny, but she is dirty, and at times that made me want to bail out on the book and put it into the did not finish section, but I pushed through because she was also just very endearing at times, and I could tell that she had a very good heart towards her family. Things that made it hard to get through, on top of her crude humor, was the fact that she spoke so highly of her husband and his role in their family, and now they are divorced, so that was just kind of a weird like lens to view that book through while I was reading it. However, she did also talk about the immigrant experience and what it was like for her family and for herself, and what it looks like being a minority in the field that she is in. And in that regard, I was very appreciative for what she shared, and I felt that I learned something through it. I would not, however, probably read it again. So January was a beautiful beast of so many books, old, new, informative. I don't know if February is going to be quite so hearty in terms of the amount of books that I read, but I do have a short list of books that I look forward to checking out this month. And those books are Crying in H Mart by Michelle Zauner, The Audacity by Katherine Ryan, Babel by R.F. Kuang, The Year of Magical Thinking by Joan Didion, The Cruelest Month by Louise Penny, I Guess I Haven't Learned That Yet by Shauna Nyquist. Thank you all for watching today. So I hope you enjoyed hearing about my January reads and my February TBR. If you want to keep up to date with what I'm reading, you can follow me on Storygraph and Goodreads. I'm tracking in both this year to see which one I like, and so far I really like Storygraph. And also comment below with your favorite January reads. I'd love to know what you read and enjoyed this past month. Meanwhile, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe if you like my channel. Wishing you all the best. Bye.